Hello.
You have asked for it.
Todd Conklin.
Todd Conklin. The interview with Todd Conklin from the Pre-Accident Investigation Podcast is here.
Now on Safety FM.
Welcome to Safety FM, where we talk about safety that's truly inspired by you. Hello and welcome to Safety FM. This episode of the broadcast and the podcast has been brought to you by Safety Focus Moment. They are consultants that are wanting to help you get to the safety culture that you've been looking for. For more information, go to safetyfocusmoment.com. Hello and welcome to Safety FM. This is Jay Allen, and today is the day that we've been talking about for about a month now. Today is our interview with Dr. Todd Conklin, host of the Pre-Accident Investigation Podcast. I will tell you, I am not going to spend a lot of time discussing about Dr. Conklin. We are just going to jump right into the interview. Take a listen to what he has to say. There's a lot of information that he goes over, so please make sure that you pay very, very close attention to this particular podcast. Enjoy it now here on Safety FM.
safetyfm.com with Jay Allen. Changing safety cultures, one broadcast and one podcast at a time.
So, Dr. Conklin, I appreciate you actually coming on to Safety FM. I appreciate everything that you have done for the industry. The first time that I had heard about you, I was inside of the ASSC meeting, the 2017 version, and they were talking about just the different concepts behind behavior-based safety and human organizational performance. It seemed more of a boxing match, and that's when I really discovered you, and I was like, those are the concepts that I believed in, and I wasn't even fully aware that that was a concept that somebody thought about. So just hearing you speak of there, I was super amazed, so I appreciate you coming on to the show today.
Ooh, super amazed. I'm glad to be here. No problem at all, man. What a treat.
Todd, what caused you to want to be involved in safety?
So probably like many people, I was a reluctant safety person. I didn't think about being involved in safety. I was really involved in how organizations function. So my background and all the stuff I do is around sort of kind of on the industrial organizational side of the house. So I look at how organizations function. And out of that, I did lots of stuff in leadership and lots of stuff with workers who want to build better teams, more functional teams, more efficient teams. And I was working at this place, Los Alamos National Laboratory, which was a great place, a really amazing place to work. And they came and said, hey, we have this new requirement for our high-risk facilities to look at human performance. We think you're a perfect fit for it. Are you interested? And I said, sure, maybe. I didn't really pay much attention. And they sent me to a meeting in Atlanta at a place called INPO, which is the Nuke Operations Learning Center. It's probably a good way to describe INPO. And they look at all the commercial nuclear power plants in the United States. And they were right at the cusp of a journey on human performance. And they were being led by a guy named Tony Mashara, who's just a phenomenal person. He's really a sweet guy. I started looking at these processes and looking at these ideas and thinking about how effective this was, how much more effective it was than Aubrey Daniels' ABC model. Not that Aubrey Daniels is a bad guy or the ABC model is bad, but I was pretty certain that most behavior was not a product of consequence. In fact, I was relatively certain that most behavior was a product of context. It was a product of the A part of the ABC model. And so I started looking at that, and geez, that was probably 25 years ago. That was a long time ago, and it just kind of started from there. Pretty soon, my career was only about safety, and it wasn't very much about the other stuff I used to do, and yet all the other stuff I used to do fit in perfectly to that safety side of the house. So that's kind of my origin story.
So then at that particular point, when do you determine to have the conversation with people that we are doing safety wrong as an industry, and how are you able to verbalize this?
Well, so it's really kind of there's a journey to this conversation, because at first I didn't think we were doing safety wrong, because there was really only one way to do safety, and that was you told people to get safer. And then you told them over and over and over again to get safer. And then you built systems where you could observe them and tell them to get safer. And then you got behavioral-based safety programs where you had peers tell them to be safer. And at the time, my belief was the problem was that the workers needed to be safer. And what this new view, this Safety Differently view did was kind of force me to look at things beyond the workers. In fact, it was the moment where I realized that the worker's not the problem to be fixed. The worker's the solution. If you treat the worker as a problem, then you're going to constantly be frustrated with workers. But if you treat the workers as a solution, what you start to see is improvement right away. And it's a really interesting, if you look at the journey that most organizations take, the journey kind of starts with the realization that human error is normal. And for a while, that becomes really super attractive, that you look at how people make mistakes and you think, what we need to do is mistake-proof the organization. We need to make sure people don't make mistakes. So we'll put in a lot of systems in there to create mistake-free. We'll mistake-proof the system. We'll idiot-proof this process. We'll make it so that they never make mistakes. But then after a while, you realize, mistakes are just normal. But mistakes aren't bad or good. They're just part of the normal fabric of being a human being. People are fallible and they make lots of mistakes. And good performers probably make more mistakes than bad performers because good performers have more opportunities to screw up. And so then once you sort of get over the mistake thing, then you start thinking about the blame thing. And the blame thing, in my mind, is kind of the big, that's the one. It's the realization somehow that blaming doesn't fix anything. And once people understand that, when I blame a guy for screwing up, when I blame a guy for cutting his hand, I've emotionally met my needs to sort of determine who is at fault, but I haven't actually done anything to fix the thing that cut the guy's hand. So you have to kind of look at error, and then you look at blame. And once you look at error and look at blame, then the old systems, the systems that we've used historically that have actually carried quite a bit of water for us, those systems aren't very effective. And then the final thing is this quite amazing realization that there's a limit to compliance. And this is kind of a big deal, but there is a limit to compliance. You're in a position, and the people who listen to you are probably definitely in this position, where more rules do not create more safety. In fact, for the most part, rules as a foundation are pretty good because they set expectations, but rules themselves are not control. They don't actually manage behavior. Rules are expectations for what we want. And lots of times there's a misalignment between the expectation of what we want and the system in which we put the worker to do the work. That was a pretty long answer.
But
that's an extra credit answer.
Absolutely. But you have a lot of information inside of there. And I think that is sometimes our misconceptions. It's, okay, all of a sudden now somebody injured their hand, but we did absolutely nothing to correct the problem. And I'm involved mostly in the transportation industry, and I'm amazed watching on how we have different organizations that will terminate a vehicle operator opposed to trying to coach and correct the issue that might have caused an accident to occur. So listening to you say that.
Even more importantly, to learn from it. So the coach and correction is good. That's great, right? That's good. Because we can coach the worker, be more careful. We can correct the system, make it harder to back into something. But the bottom line is that primarily at the foundational level, what we have to do is create an opportunity to learn. And the problem with blame is that blame is the opposite of learning. So when we go to blame, we have sort of the emotional payoff. It actually gives us our confirmation. It tells us, okay, we fixed the problem. But in fact, we haven't fixed anything. We fixed blame. We haven't fixed the worker. And blame doesn't make a system better. I mean, it just doesn't. If you lose your car keys, you can blame yourself all day long for losing your car keys. But I'll bet you a nickel at some point you go to the car dealer and you get another key. That's actually a solution, and it has nothing to do with blame. It has everything to do with fixing the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And I'll tell you, I was behavior-based safety for a long period of time, at least mentally. And then just kind of some of the shifts that came across as I kept on being more and more involved in safety. I have to start changing some of the wording that I use because I want to default to some of the things that I used to do. But as I look into human organizational performance, I just look at it and go, this is such a better aspect where it has a better understanding on how it should work by really getting some of the opinions of the employee/team members.
When you think about changing the vocabulary, because words matter, right?
Absolutely.
What you're really telling me is you're changing the questions. So you're not just changing the vocabulary, you're changing the questions you ask. And when you ask different questions, you get different answers. And to me, that's the most obvious part of this sort of shift towards new view, this shift towards this new safety, is that what we're changing is really not anything except the question. So when you move from asking what failed as opposed to asking who failed, you just get different answers because it's a different question. So the traditional thing is a guy cuts his hand. So who failed? How did he fail? Why did he fail? So now if a guy cuts his hand, you say what failed? So instead of looking at the guy in the hand, because you have to have that to cut your hand, you start looking at the system in which the guy was performing the work, and you start asking questions. Why does this have sharp edges on it? I mean, does it have to have sharp edges on it? And a lot of times people say, no, it doesn't have to. And the reason we're normally successful is because people are normally pretty careful. But if you get any kind of a variability, any kind of anomaly in the system, that carefulness that you normally count on to be dependable goes away and you fail.
So as you answer some of these questions, I mean, just out of curiosity, how did you come up with the concept of human organizational performance?
So the name's really interesting. I'm not in love with that name by any stretch of the imagination. But when they started the program, IMPO, and really, I mean, there's a lot of people to thank. James Reason was a part of this, and the Institute for Nuclear Power Operations, that's IMPO, they were a part of it. Tony Mashara, Shane Bush, there's a whole bunch of names in there. We used to call it human performance. And human performance was really good unless you're in the nuke industry, because then you couldn't use the abbreviation HP because that actually stood for health physics. So we started calling it HU, and that didn't really work as well either. And when it started rolling out of the nuke industry into the rest of the world, this is a long time ago, there was some real pushback around calling it human performance, partially because it was kind of getting confused with human factors. And that's fair because the definition we use for human factors in the United States is quite different than the definition that's used for human factors in Europe. So there was some confusion there. And then there was this notion that it was still pretty focused directly on workers, and that unions really had a hard time with rolling out a program called human performance because it focused on their members. So they spread out the idea and said, well, let's call it human and organizational performance. And really, a guy named Kurt Kruger, who's a blast from the past name, he sort of coined the phrase because he was doing a lot of work in Europe at the time and saw that potential name sort of being a part of the new angle. It's also got, the thing about these new ideas is that what you call them, it's kind of like a movement, right? What you call them is sort of organic. So for a long time, we called it New View Safety or Safety Differently. That's a name that's kind of sticking now. But what it really is that it's safety that's focused away from sort of the big three. We don't see the workers as a problem. We see the workers as a solution. When you see the workers as a solution, then you want to go out and ask the workers what they need. And what really happens is we change the definition of safety. So traditionally, and a lot of people that are listening to this will tell you that safety is measured by the absence of failure. So we actually measure the OSHA reportable numbers, TRC and DART rate. We measure how many people we hurt. And obviously, if you hurt a lot of people, you suck at safety. But if you hurt fewer people, then you're really super good at safety. Well, that is kind of a notion of looking at safety as an output to be achieved or an output to be managed. What HOP does, or what human performance does, is it actually redefines safety not as an output, but as a capacity. So safety is not an end product. Safety is the way you do the work. So think of capacity the way you think about a gas tank in your car, is that you manage the amount of gas you have based upon the trip you're going to take. So if you're going to take a long trip, you want your tank to be full because you don't want to run out of gas, because if you run out of gas, you can't function. So you manage the capacity, you manage the ability to fail and fail safely.
So when you describe this to somebody who believes in behavior-based safety, what is the biggest pushback that you normally get? Workers make bad decisions, make bad choices, they make risky choices, and that I'll never fix that. And that's really a cute argument. I mean, it's, if workers just made better choices, we'd have safer workplace. It's kind of true. I mean, it's like saying people fall down because of gravity. Yeah, they do. That's true. It's kind of incomplete, but it's pretty true. Behavioral-based safety people are really tied in. They've got a lot of invested emotional energy and usually a lot of